Support WrestleTalk!
Press the thumbs up. Hello and welcome to the Finn Martin Report podcast. I'm Ollie Davis and I'm joined by Finn, and I'm not going to ask him how he's doing because we had an off-air discussion about how it's kind of awkward to come up with things that we're doing. It's generally just variations on, yeah, all right, watch some wrestling. Should we talk about wrestling? But I'm going to tell you what I've been up to, because I've had quite a strange experience today, because I feel like I've been talking to you all weekend, because I've finally started reading Pro Wrestling Through the Power Slam Years. That's the journey of Finn Martin into the publication industry and the course of wrestling through, was it the years 1992 to 2012?
2014, yes.
Ah, right, yes. So, yeah, it's fascinating. I'm loving it so far, but it does feel like I've been talking to you a lot more. Like we've been having conversations about you starting up Superstars of Wrestling in the early 90s, but we haven't had any of those conversations.
No, we haven't, no. Well, that's it. I mean, you know, it was about time you bought that book, Ollie Davis. I'm glad you're enjoying it, and hopefully many more people out there who haven't bought it yet will consider doing so after this glowing recommendation from you, Ollie.
Yep, and 'tis the season to be buying gifts, even digital gifts. Treat yourself.
Exactly.
Because that's available on Amazon, isn't it?
It certainly is. iBooks and Kobo.
Kobo? I don't even know what that one is.
Well, when you get involved in the ebook business, you learn about these things.
So I should go to each of these services and buy the book again?
Well, you don't have to do that. Boy, once, that's enough. That's enough.
I do really recommend it, though. It is a fascinating read, because not only does it tell your story and the Power Slam story, which is interesting enough on its own, but it also gives you a really nice framework, a narrative to just hook on all these crazy wrestling stories, and little bits of history and information have occurred all the way through.
Yeah, it was. I started writing it right after I closed Power Slam in July 2014. The book didn't come out until September 2015. But that's 245,000 words, and there's just so much information in there. And I was doing other things at the same time as well, so it wasn't just nearly 14 months on that. But I look back on it, I've got a printed out version on laser. I printed it on a laser printer, and I think, wow, no wonder it took so long to write. There's a heck of a lot of information in there. But yeah, I was very pleased with it, and hopefully if you haven't bought it, please check it out.
But for now, actually, one more quick bit before we get into Roadblock. End of the line. You've got to say end of the line, remember. It's Christmas time, so there's going to be a few bits of patchy scheduling coming up on WrestleTalk's YouTube channel and the podcast network. I won't really be doing anything next week because I'm going to be too busy playing on my new PS4 game, hopefully. And so there'll be a lot of best of videos that are going up. I had to go through all of the news this year to sort of find the weirdest stories or the craziest shoot things, to make these videos, these compilation videos.
Yeah.
2016 has been insane.
It really has. I mean, to me, the craziest thing to me was just the whole stuff with Billy Corgan and Dixie and TNA. And I look back on that now, and I'm still baffled by the whole thing. I really am. Anyway, maybe these Anthem people will make TNA a success in 2017. Maybe that will happen. And maybe this will all be for the best. You've got to say these things, haven't you, Ollie, at this time of year? You can't be bleak, you can't be Mr. Doom and Gloom. Yeah. So, but that whole thing there with Dixie and Billy Corgan and the way that went down, that to me was the strangest, at least the strangest outside the ring story of the year.
Oh, I don't see. You've got that. And then there's the ongoing saga of Paige and Del Rio. And I think that's the stranger one, because I still don't know what's going on there. There's still something strange happening because all these incidents keep popping up.
Yeah, it's. I would really rather not comment on that. You hope that when she's recovered from her neck surgery, it's hard for me to believe that she'll go back to WWE, but they can't release a until she's recovered. I mean, that's the way it works there. So she'll be getting paid a downside guarantee. That's the way it's worked for many, many years. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when she recovers, which will probably be, what do you think, around about May, June?
Yeah, so she had neck surgery in October, from what we can understand by social media posts.
Yeah.
So 6 to 9 months, I'd say. That sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah, and what will happen then? I mean, it's hard for me to believe they're going to bring her back. But, I mean, they might do, you know. I mean, this whole, you know, she may be seen. By then, they may think, well, hang on a minute, things have calmed down. We can bring her back now and we can make this work. You know, or maybe they're going to think, well, if we fire her right after she's recovered from neck surgery, that's going to be a real PR disaster. So we're going to have to bring her back for a while. I mean, we'll have to wait and see what happens. But you're right, it's been a very strange business.
Yeah, one of the most recent development in the Alberto Del Rio and Paige saga was that Alberto Del Rio, this was a genuine headline I woke up to on Monday morning. Alberto Del Rio beats up Ninja Turtle. And it came from I can't remember, I think it was a show in Mexico where Alberto Del Rio apparently thought someone disrespected Paige. This is confirmed by him on his Twitter account. And he beat up a guy who was wrestling as a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle because copyright laws don't mean anything in some places of the world, it seems. But then I thought, that's got to be the craziest story of the year, just in terms of sheer ridiculousness and headline ability. But then, when I was going back, I completely forgot about Titus O'Neil getting suspended. Just for pushing Vince McMahon.
Yeah, I mean...
That's like... That was a thing that happened this year.
Yeah, I mean, it was, a lot of people thought, in fact, I'm sure we talked about this, Alex and I talked about this at the time, a lot of people thought that it was a work or a storyline, and I remember saying, well, why would it be? And of course it wasn't. You know, it's not that, you know, I know everything or anything, it's just whenever something that happens like that, you've got to say to whether it's real or whether it's scripted or it isn't, you should ask yourself, why would this be scripted? You know, how can they benefit from this? Where can it go? And to me, it didn't seem like it could possibly be something that was scripted because it didn't make any sense for it to be part of a storyline. And yeah, you're right. It was like, well, why was he suspended? You know, Titus O'Neil, who's a guy who does all this stuff for charity. And like, you know, he isn't really a particularly great performer in the ring. In many ways, I think he's been a fun character this year because he's sort of been sending himself up. And you could say, well, that's all a punishment from what happened way back then with Vince. But I really feel like the character, it's a fun character. I mean, Titus is never going to be a big star. I mean, even if the thing with Vince hadn't happened, he would never have been a top guy. So he's still there. He's still making money. He's still representing the company. You know, I'm sure some people think that he should be further up the card than he is. Let's face it, he couldn't be any further down the card than he is. But I mean, maybe this is his role, where he's more like an ambassador for the company and a guy who does things outside the ring, you know, to enhance WWE's image. You know, maybe that's his role going forward. And if so, I mean, hopefully, if you're a bit of a marginal talent, you can be cut at any time. If you've got a role like that where you're pretty much a WWE ambassador, you're getting paid your downside, you're not taking bumps, you're not in a position to injure yourself. You know, it's not a bad gig, as long as you don't have these huge ambitions to be a big star. Then it's like then it's a punishment. If it's something, if you like doing all that stuff, and I believe Titus does, then maybe this is a great gig for him. Maybe this is ideal for him.
Yeah, so the reason I brought up all these best of things is because of the schedule, and it also means that we're having a little break for podcasts over the Christmas period, just for 2 weeks or so. But that means Wrestling Histories is going to skip a week. So the next chapter, or whatever we call them, is going to be out early January. So don't worry if you don't you think that that's stopped. It is coming back, don't worry. So Roadblock End of the Line kicked off with Sheamus. Well, I say kicked off with, we're not doing the actual kickoff show, which, if you're interested, Rusev beat Big Cass via count out. That's exciting. But the first match of the actual proper show was Shamaro, which is my shorthand for Sheamus and Cesaro, beating the New Day to end their 483-day reign just days after they broke Demolition's record earlier in the week. They couldn't wait to get the titles off these guys, could they?
No. Absolutely right. I mean, what about Big E and Kofi Kingston's Christmas outfits? I mean, how colourful were they? I mean, my eyes were hurting.
So it was like a red and green thing. They looked like they were wearing wrapping paper on their legs.
Absolutely. I mean, those guys, it's like, they've got some... It's well, I mean, they got into the Christmas spirit, that's what it's all about. I mean, at least their tights were happy. They weren't when the match ended.
Yeah, they were. I mean, I was expecting... New Day have been on an interesting journey over the last few months because they have been employing more and more heel tactics. And I almost thought that now would be the time to turn them heel against Sheamus and Cesaro. Let the New Day keep the belts. I can totally see why they went with Sheamus and Cesaro as the new champs, though. I thought this was a great match.
I would absolutely agree. Yeah, really enjoyed it. I thought the pace was fast from the start, but then they slowed it down a little bit and then accelerated towards the end. I thought it was really well put together. I mean, you can see these guys, everyone knows these guys have been working together on the road. I mean, they're all really good in the ring. I mean, obviously Kingston and Big E, not Xavier Woods, who actually I felt did really well on Raw last week. He was in one of the, he was on Raw last week, and I thought because I mean, you can see that they're not 100% confident that Xavier Woods can hold it together, but he really proved himself on Raw, the episode where they did New Day open the show and close the show. And I thought that, Xavier Woods did a really good job on that show. So as for Roadblock, end of the line, it was Big E and Kofi Kingston. Yeah, really enjoyed the match, as I said, and really good finish. Well, I thought I had to watch that finish twice. I was like, did he really do that? And Sheamus came over to make the tag to Cesaro, but Cesaro moved his hand, jumped into the ring. He took the kick from Kofi Kingston, who was not aware that Cesaro hadn't tagged. So Cesaro took the hit, and then Sheamus, still a legal man, he dived on top of Kofi Kingston for the 1-2-3, and we had new tag team champions. They continued the storyline of Cesaro and Sheamus not being bosom buddies, where Sheamus had both belts afterwards. Cesaro went into the crowd, and then Cesaro ran after Sheamus, grabbed one of the belts. So that storyline's obviously still going. But I mean, I think they can do plenty with that. They can still, presumably there'll be a point where they will become pals and they'll become a united, solid team. And that's a story they can work to. So I think it's, in a sense, you would think after they did the angle, the angle in the pub, in the Irish pub.
I love that. That's one of my favourite angles in the last few months.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was pretty naff, but I mean,
it was brilliantly camp.
It was knowing, wasn't it? It was like a self-parody, and everyone was in on the joke. No one was meant to take it seriously, and it was fun. And they sort of buried the hatchet there, but they're still playing this sort of like we're not, absolutely on the same page. But I think they can do plenty with that. And, I've been campaigning for these two guys to win the title for a while. And I'm very pleased for them. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what they can do as champs. And as you say, it was New Day, maybe this is time for New Day to turn. They dropped hints with some of their heel tactics that would be, the eventuality would be that they would turn heel. And maybe that'll happen on Raw tonight. We're actually recording this on Monday before Raw, so we don't know so we can't comment on that. But I would think if the New Day act is going to continue, then a heel turn is a must.
Their characters are almost more suited to being a heel, because they're quite annoying. In the nicest possible way. They're funny guys, but they're not funny in a cool way. They're funny in an annoying way. And I think that sort of getting under your skin humour lends itself more to a heel character, more like a Miz. But I thought that this match, that spot, the finish, like you said, you had to go back and watch it a few times. I didn't quite understand what had happened until they did the replay, and then I was like, oh my god, that's amazing. I've never seen that done in a tag match before. Can you recall it?
I've never seen that one before. I'm sure it has been done before. I mean, I thought it was really well done. And just the whole thing where Sheamus went to the tag and he didn't do like a slow tag. And I just thought, well, what if they'd botched that? That would have just been, and he didn't, because these guys know what they're doing. And I thought it was, really clever. I mean, it probably was confusing for people in the arena. Maybe they could see it on the big screen afterwards and it all made sense. That's what we at home, the announcers explained it to us, so it all made sense to us. So, I mean, I thought it was a great finish. I thought it was really well done. And, they outsmarted the New Day there.
Well, that's it. It ties into so much other bits. It's not just an isolated cool spot. It's the culmination of this odd couple relationship of Sheamus and Cesaro, and the feud of them being against the New Day, who are cheating more, because it wasn't an out-and-out babyface tactic. This was, it was deceiving to employ that sort of trick is kind of heelish in itself. But they beat New Day at their own game, and at the same time you had the extra dimension of Cesaro jumping into the ring, taking the Trouble in Paradise kick from Kofi. So he essentially sacrificed himself for his odd couple partner. What sort of more confirmation that these two guys are now a unified team than that? And then they just work seamlessly together. It really reminded me of, I don't follow American football, but I love American football films, because there's something really quite stupidly glitzy about them. And there always seems to be a bit where the way to outsmart the opposition is with this crazily contrived play. And they do a double switch in the back, and then this guy's running, but actually it's another guy who's got it tucked under his helmet. And it felt like that kind of play. And it was a smart, thought out bit that made me think, Sheamus and Cesaro planned that out beforehand, not from a wrestling perspective, like you plan a fake match, but they planned that as a tactic to win their match. And it made me buy into it more. I really loved it.
Yeah, I thought it was the second best match on the card, and a terrific way to open the show.
Well, I assume we're moving on to your favourite match of the show then. Braun Strowman versus Sami Zayn was up next. 10-minute time limit.
Before that, I mean, we should just mention that we've Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho. They had a lot of fallout there backstage. Kevin Owens was there. He gave Chris Jericho a scarf, to make amends, to apologise for all the, miscommunication and problems of the last few weeks. And Jericho looked at the scarf, just tossed it to one side, walked off without saying a word. So, here we go. Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho still at odds. And that leads us to, Braun Strowman versus Sami Zayn. What did you make of this match, Ollie?
So, the whole night really was really hurt by the crowd, because I don't think the crowd were a particularly good crowd. They seemed quite dead for a lot of it. We'll come onto that more in the Banks and Charlotte match. I thought that hurt it quite considerably. But yeah, it's first of all, the finish came. You say the finish came out of nowhere, but really there was a giant counter counting down to the finish. So you can't really say it came out of nowhere. But it was almost as though the crowd didn't know that Sami would win if he lasted 10 minutes. Because otherwise I think they would have got more emotionally invested. To be honest, I didn't know that Sami would win if he lasted 10 minutes. So when it was getting to the end and Zayn gave him the haluva kick, he was getting ready for the next one, and then it just ended, and then he collapsed. I was like, oh, so it's a draw? And I think a lot of the people in the crowd thought that until the ring announcer confirmed that it was a Sami Zayn victory. But yeah, overall, I mean, of course you got the stuff beforehand where Mick Foley comes out to do the throw in the towel bit. And again, it's like, but I thought Mick Foley wasn't actually concerned for Sami Zayn. I thought he was trying to rile Sami Zayn up. So if he's now coming out to throw in the towel for Sami Zayn, does that mean... I mean, it was very inconsistent, that logic.
I agree.
And again, God, now I've opened up this Pandora's box of this match. It was Mick Foley came down to stop the match when the match was just like nothing really that hurty. Hurty, great English, Ollie. There wasn't anything that serious. This comes just a few months after we saw Brock Lesnar legitimately concuss Randy Orton and bust him open with an elbow to the forehead. That was in late August at SummerSlam. And now I don't know why they expect us to buy into a guy having a mediocre, non-threatening wrestling match is enough to get someone to come in and go, no, he can't continue. This is hurting him too much. What did you think?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that whole thing on Raw 6 days before the show, we found out Foley was trying to motivate Zayn to be as good as he could be so he would be man enough to take on Braun Strowman. As you say, he wanted him all riled up and, ready to go in there and for this biggest test of his career. It was kind of demeaning for Zayn at like 5 minutes 46. Strowman picked Zayn up rather than pin him, which was the thing that heels used to do back in the squash match era to try and get heat. It didn't really get that much heat for Strowman. I mean, the crowd really weren't on board with this, and I think it's possible that they didn't really get it. And it was like a 10-minute challenge, wasn't it? I don't think they really emphasised what was going on here. And they should have just said, if Sami Zayn lasts 10 minutes with Braun Strowman, then he is declared the winner. I mean, this is really the sort of match that this match is as old as the business itself, and it should work, but it was the wrong people. It should be like a very young sort of rookie in there with like a veteran. That's the way, the psychology for this match to really work. It should be someone in his early 20s or whatever, facing someone in his late 30s, and really having that never say die attitude. And just really getting the fans behind him. It's the sort of match that, Southern wrestling promotions would do far better than Vince McMahon's sports entertainment, actually. It's that sort of match. I mean, to me, if you've been watching wrestling for a very long time or aware of wrestling going back to the early 80s, Sam Houston would be the guy that I could envisage in this role, who was, really fiery babyface, like a slender guy. And he's the sort of person who would have really made this work against a veteran, much larger heel. So, the psychology of it, because of who was in there, because Zayn's obviously got lots of experience in wrestling far longer than Braun Strowman, it sort of didn't really work. I mean, at the end of the day, Sami Zayn was the guy who beat Kevin Owens.
Yeah.
The current Universal Champion at the pay-per-view. What was that pay-per-view called?
Battleground.
Battleground, that was it. So, I mean, we've got Zayn there, plus he was the guy who had that amazing match with Shinsuke Nakamura at the NXT event just before WrestleMania. So, I mean, this is a guy that's not a young up-and-comer, who's out to prove himself. He's had all these amazing matches. It's just an odd arrangement of people. And then when Foley came out with a towel, it was like, well, why are you wanting to throw the towel in after what you said on Monday? And why are you going to throw the towel in when Zayn doesn't look like he's in, danger of being destroyed? So, and then Zayn made the comeback. At least, Zayn lasted the 10 minutes. I mean, at least they can go somewhere with this tonight or next week on Raw. I had a terrible feeling that Zayn wasn't going to last the 10 minutes. And had he not lasted the 10 minutes, it wouldn't have been curtains for his career, because wins and losses really don't mean that much anymore in WWE. But it would have been more difficult for him to come back from than what happened at Roadblock. End of the line last night. So, I mean, it could have been worse. I mean, there was lots of things about it, and we just pulled it to pieces there. Lots of things about it made no sense. But I think, the important thing is that Zayn did last the 10 minutes, and hopefully this will take him somewhere away from Braun Strowman.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of Braun Strowman. The other thing, to the flip side of Sami, is that they managed to let Sami stay for 10 minutes and Braun still looks strong.
Yeah.
I thought he didn't lose a thing, especially because, he went through the period of just running into things. Like Sami Zayn would stand somewhere, then move, and Braun would run into it. When he ran into the timekeeper's area, when that usually happens, it's just one panel that comes off. This one looked like half the arena exploded when Braun Strowman went into it. Like the bits popped off on the sides. I think someone was trapped underneath. It was brilliant. I really like that bit.
I would like to say as well that Strowman is a guy that I have knocked in the past and said that the guy was clueless, and which at many points in the past he was. And the match, I thought he looked competent in the ring. There was never a moment in that match where he looked like he didn't belong in a WWE ring. So that's something I think that definitely deserves to be mentioned. So congratulations to Braun for, he's in there with Zayn, who's obviously a really good performer, but Strowman, he carried his part of the match. So congrats to him for that.
So going into Chris Jericho versus Seth Rollins now, I don't have anything to say. I was really bored by this match. I'm ashamed to say. And I thought this was an okay pay-per-view. I thought there were some weird bits in it, but overall, you two title changes, a really cool heel turn. I thought the main event was really good up until another weird finish. But this was I think this was the worst match on the show for me, just because of wasted potential.
Yeah, I think the most notable thing to me about it was how heavily Triple H was featured in the pre-match video, which could only mean that his return is imminent. I mean, part-timer season is nearly upon us, so he's going to be back early Jan. I can't imagine him coming back before the first Raw of January. It wouldn't really make sense to put him on Raw tonight or next week. First, he's coming back, so I think that's a good thing. But I agree with you. The match, it didn't really seem to have a reason to exist. It just felt like it was a match where, we've got these two guys who were pushing. Let's pit them against each other and see what happens. I mean, I thought it was pretty dull. I thought it was pretty sloppy in places. Some really dodgy exchanges in there. Really ropey in places. Actually, I thought it was, I wouldn't call it amateur hour, but some of it should have looked a lot better than it did. I felt the match really sagged, and Kevin Owens came out, of course, to distract Rollins. Jericho's there having one of his little tantrums, and then Rollins pinned him with the pedigree. I mean, the outcome was inevitable because Rollins is, of course, going to face Triple H either at the Royal Rumble or WrestleMania. There was no way he could lose to Jericho here, so it just felt like something that they booked to give these guys something to do.
Yeah, it kind of ties in with the whole main event picture in that you've got Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho on one side, and then you've got Rollins and Reigns on the other. So it does naturally pair themselves off. But I mean, both guys are explicitly saying in the build-up, this is just a stepping stone for me. Seth Rollins is like, I'm gonna compete for, I'm gonna go against Triple H in the end, and Chris Jericho still kind of feels like he's in a US Championship feud. I mean, it would just be so good. Imagine if Chris Jericho had the US title, if he won that off Roman Reigns from, was it Hell in a Cell? There's so many these days.
Yeah. I mean, but you're right. I mean, the title is wasted on Roman Reigns, and Jericho could have done something with it. He could have even renamed it the Canadian title.
Exactly, especially because,
that Storm did back in 2000 in WCW. So, I mean, but it would be, I mean, you'd be getting far more mileage out of the US title if Jericho had it right now, with Jericho being champ and Owens being champ. And, it is completely wasted on Roman Reigns.
Yeah. Shall we move on to the Cruiserweight Triple Threat?
Yes.
So this was Rich Swann, who was the defending champion, versus TJ Perkins versus the Brian Kendrick. Not any Brian Kendrick, the Brian Kendrick. And we had the Purple Ropes and Austin Aries on commentary.
Yeah.
He was my favourite thing about the match until the finish.
Yeah, Austin Aries was really good. I'm a fan of Austin Aries' commentary. I think he's really getting over with the right people in WWE, and I think he's going to be a big player in this company next year. I think they'll probably bring him in the Cruiserweight division, and then Vince will say, this guy is too good for this division, let's get him in the heavyweight division, which is exactly what happened with him in TNA.
Yeah.
So I like Austin Aries' chances in 2017. I mean, he's a guy that's, you can see that he's very confident, he's funny, he likes to put himself over, but he puts other people over as well. So I think he's a real good all-rounder. He really understands what his role is there. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of Austin Aries. And you're right, the match was total silence for Kendrick's Captain Hook and TJ Perkins' knee bar. I mean, it was just. I was watching Brock Lesnar's first match in UFC against Frank Mir recently, because for something that I'm writing at the moment. And Brock Lesnar tapped out to the knee bar in that match at 90 seconds of the first round. Now, when that move is put on, when that hold is put on, hold is put on, you tap out straight away. And Perkins has got the knee bar on for ages and no one's tapping out. It's like, this is not what's supposed to happen with submission moves, especially when the fans aren't reacting to them. So I really felt like Perkins should have released that hold sooner than he did, because he was ruining the hold, and just any, not that there was really much in the way of suspension of disbelief anyway, but it just, if a submission hold's not provoking the correct reaction from the audience, to me, a wrestler should release it and do something else or move on to the next spot, rather than holding something when the people just aren't responding to it in the way they should be doing so, in the way they should be doing. It was, there was a couple of sloppy moments in this match as well, some hesitation. It was, TJ Perkins, I think, is the fly in the ointment here. I mean, I hate to say it, but they just need to get rid of him. I mean, he just doesn't have any personality at all. People are not responding to him. Fortunately, we had the post-match, which the guy may save the day. But, do you want to do the post-match, Ollie?
Sure. The running joke online at the moment is the man creative forgot. But he's come back, and this was, from what was quite a, like you've already covered, quite a boring match and tricky in places. Jim Ross made a really good point on Twitter that I'd never thought about before. He said submission holds aren't really the best thing to use when talents aren't over.
Correct.
Because it it takes all the energy out of the match. But after it, no one's going to be talking about this match. Everyone's going to be talking about Neville making his return. 6 weeks he's been out. It feels like a lot longer. So I went back and checked out his recent history. The last time we saw Neville on WWE TV, because he always wrestles on the house shows, was on the Halloween special of Raw, where he was involved in a battle royal. And then his last singles match was 2 weeks before that, on the 16th of October, I believe. Maybe I'm a few days out there. And he lost to Bo Dallas.
Yes.
So they have done absolutely nothing with Neville for so long. So it's so nice to see him. First of all, it was nice to see him come out, because we've been saying for a few weeks now that for the Cruiserweight division really to thrive, for 205 Live to be actually worth watching, you need some named stars alongside all these people who have just been called up for a larger mainstream audience from seemingly out of nowhere. You need these guys that have been in WWE, your Sin Caras, your Nevilles, your Callistos. We said Apollo Crews, but apparently Apollo Crews is billed at 240.
Yeah, well, he is a pretty big guy, but I mean, they could just change that. No one's going to notice.
Yeah. But then I looked what else he's built. He's built at 6 foot.
No.
I know, there's no way he's 6 foot. According to them, according to WWE's website, or at least I think it was wherever I was looking, he's the same height as Sami Zayn. I'm like, what sort of Tom Phillips conspiracy is this? Yeah. So I think you could put Apollo Crews in there, and just explain it away with a bit of exposition dialogue.
Oh, definitely. They could just say, well, he's been working out, he's been doing his cardio, he's been cutting down on his calorie intake, he's lost all this weight specifically to compete in this division. And there'll be a few sort of snide comments. Actually, I'd probably make a few snide comments. Yeah. You probably would as well, Ollie. And then
exactly.
After that, he'd be in there and he'd be somebody that could really contribute to that division. But I mean, the big story here, of course, is Neville coming out after a really flat match. Swan pinned Perkins, and it was one of those matches where you just think, wow, this division. I think I've said this in the last podcast. It amazes me in a sense that Vince McMahon and Kevin Dunn have persevered with it this long, because the reaction to the triple threat match on Roadblock, end of the line, was, it was just typical reaction to a cruiserweight match. And, reactions to Jericho and Seth Rollins weren't really that strong either. So I think we should point that out as well. So as you mentioned earlier, that the crowd could have been better, could have provided more of an atmosphere. And when Seth Rollins and Chris Jericho weren't exactly blowing the roof off, I did think to myself, yeah, those cruiserweights are going to struggle out there, and they certainly did. But when Neville came out and did the heel turn on Swan and then beat down Perkins, people really got into that. I mean, you could say, well, a lot of people were cheering him, which wasn't the reaction they sought, but at least it got a reaction. So I'm happy that Neville is back. I'm happy he's in this division, and I'm hoping he's gonna make more people give it a chance, and I'm interested to see as well what he does as a heel, because we've never seen him as a heel in WWE.
Yeah, I was trying to think back. He sort of flirted with it in NXT, didn't he? When was he feuding with Zayn?
There was just before he left, it did sort of seem like he was going to turn, and it didn't happen. And then he moved up to the main roster. But I mean, I'm really hoping that they're going to give him some mic time and they're going to let him really cut loose, and hopefully he can really trash the fans as well. Because there's not that many heels that do that. And I mean, I know Miz does a little bit, but I'd like Neville to do that sort of scene, the promo that we always wanted John Cena to do. Back in the days when people were encouraging him to, when people were writing, particularly me writing the stories, they need to turn him, and that would have been a tremendous promo from Cena where he just threw it back in the fans' faces. And I think Neville can do that promo as well, where he can just say, you people just weren't interested. You didn't give me a chance. I was just a guy that came out here and did some flips. I'm not here to entertain you. I'm here to win that title, make more money, become a big star in this company. And I'm doing it for me, not for you. That type of typical heel promo. But hopefully that's something that they'll have him do. And I think he'll make a real impression there. I think hopefully this will be a real good thing for Neville's career and the Cruiserweight division.
How is Neville on the mic? Because I'm not that familiar with his work as Pac before he got to WWE. Does he fare well?
He's not. One time Greg Lambert referred to him as, because his nickname was the man that gravity forgot. And one time Greg Lambert referred to him in a promo as the man personality forgot.
Oh dear.
And I don't think that went down too well. And anyway, so, but yeah, you're right. I mean, he's somebody that hasn't really done well. Do you remember they actually started a little storyline? It was one of those classic WWE storylines that started and did it for maybe 2 weeks and then just dropped it, and it was never mentioned again, where Miz was going to be his mentor. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, that rings a bell.
Yeah, Miz was going to give him this personality and teach him how to do all these things to really stand out from the crowd and not just be this tumbler, this mid-card tumbler. The storyline went nowhere. So the answer to the question is, I don't think he's really that great on promos. He doesn't really have that much personality, or at least in the past he hasn't been that great on promos. And the fact that they don't really let him near the mic answers that question. But that doesn't mean that he can't be great on promos in future with a new personality and a new character.
Sure.
And if they don't want to let him do promos live, pre-tape them, they can do that. Let's face it, anyone. I think if you can't do a pre-tape promo and you work for WWE, then you shouldn't be working for WWE.
Yeah, I hopefully he does. This heel persona really invigorates him, because I've always seen Neville as one of those guys who's always going to be a babyface, like a Kofi Kingston or like a Rey Mysterio, because it's hard to boo a guy who's that amazingly athletic and like the moves he can do. But when he turned up and he had, I know he's had the beard for a while, but the beard, he was grimacing his face off. Just how physically bigger he looked than everyone else in that ring. I thought I'm really excited to see what he does. Hopefully they do. If they don't think he can go out there and cut an amazing 5-minute promo in front of an audience, I really do hope they limit him to. There are ways to package that to not expose wrestlers' faults.
Of course there are.
And weirdly, WWE have just ignored that for a very long time now. And the Titus O'Neil promo from this year is the obvious example. But shall we move on to Banks versus Charlotte?
In the Iron Person match.
Yeah, let's be gender blind here. We can't. It does bug me that they say Iron Man.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
It. Don't understand it either. I don't understand why are they calling it an Iron Man match when it's women in it. I don't get it.
Yeah, especially because Solomonster, another really good wrestling podcast, another one like with the other is he proposed an Iron Maiden match. And I think that's a really good choice for because it comes across. You're doing the whole women's revolution. You are constantly forcing down her throats. These are women. Look at the women, and then they say, "And now here's an Iron Man match." So it does jar a bit. But again, this was so it was a 30-minute Iron Man match, and no falls for the first 20 minutes.
Yeah. Charlotte scored the first fall. And then Banks equalised. I mean, I thought it was very well put together. I thought the whole match was very well done. Absolutely my favourite match from these two on the main roster.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. I just think it was very well paced. They were doing more wrestling. They weren't taking stupid bumps. I mean, we talked before. I think I've talked before. Often when Sasha Banks does things, you're fearful for her and you think, is she going to be all right? 'Cause she takes these crazy bumps and she doesn't appear to be in control. She did less of that sort of thing, which I was pleased to see. And they really sort of built it slowly. I mean, I thought the fans were there with them. I mean, there was if you contrast the reaction to this match with the reaction to the Cruiserweight title match, there is definitely a difference. People were into this. I think they were, in a sense, pacing themselves. So they didn't burn themselves out before the end of the match because they knew it was going to be a long one. Obviously, it was going to be 30 minutes, and it actually was longer than 30 minutes. And they made them wait for that first fall. And then Banks very quickly equalised. Then she went 2-1 ahead with 6 minutes to go. But then Sasha, she tapped in the figure eight with just 3 seconds to go, making it 2-2. But I mean, I thought that last sequence, in a sense, it's not believable that she couldn't have lasted for another 3 seconds. You could say, well, that's not believable. She could have hung on for another 3 seconds. She'd been in that figure eight for a very long time as it was. I was just talking a moment ago about the knee bar being like an immediate tap out. She'd been in that figure eight for so long that you would have thought she could last another 3 seconds. If you want to talk about it in terms of being real, but of course this is pro wrestling, so the rules are different. So, but I thought that was pretty well done because I didn't expect that. I thought she was going to last the 30 minutes and then tap out after the 30-minute time limit had expired, and she didn't. So I didn't see that coming. So I thought that was quite well done. And something unusual, something unexpected. But I mean, I thought the match was very proficient. I thought the performances were excellent. Really, really impressed with this match. My favourite match on the show by far.
See, I think the being held in that submission move for so long negates Lance Storm's defense. So he talked about this on Twitter because a lot of people were saying if she could see, because she could quite clearly see the clock. She was positioned right in front of the thing. Like, why wouldn't you just hold on a few seconds more? It makes her look like a weak champion. But Lance Storm replied, in the legit hold, I bet you'd tap and not even notice the time. So that's a nice argument to it, and that definitely works. But I think in the grander scheme of the way WWE have set up moves and the impact of moves, that falls apart. Because like you said, the match before this, TJ Perkins had it's a knee bar on for like 30 seconds and nothing happened.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It does fall apart a bit like that. And I'm going to steal someone else's opinion as well, actually, because everyone else is better than me. Dave Meltzer said on the Wrestling Observer radio review of this that the match was almost structured the wrong way round for a babyface, because you would want Sasha chasing that last tap out, wouldn't you? You'd put Sasha behind so Charlotte it would go level in the very last moment, because that's a big babyface pop.
Yeah.
But weirdly, that spot went to Charlotte. And that's not a knock-up, because I do like switching things up every now and again, but it's not like Sasha Banks has been booked as this amazing babyface. There's still something quite robotic about her, I find. So I don't know why they didn't help her out there and give her that one.
Well, they could have done, that would be the traditional way to do it. I mean, if you're looking at old-time wrestling psychology, yeah, that's absolutely right, that the babyface should be chasing, and they've decided to do it the different way. So, I mean, that's their decision to do something different. I mean, in many ways, WWE can't win, because if they do something predictable, people go, oh, it's so predictable. Oh, it's so stale. We've seen it all before. And then they do something completely different like this. And then the argument is, oh, well, the psychology of it is all wrong. So, I mean, the damned if they do, if the damned if they don't. I mean, I totally understand that opinion. Because I've written that before in Power Slam in the past, in that the babyface should be chasing the heel for maximum volume from the audience, but they decided to do something different here. One thing after Charlotte scored that final fall, the ring announcer said Charlotte Flair has gone up, scored a fall.
Oh, did that? I missed that bit. Was there a bit of botch on JoJo's part?
Yeah, she did. But let's face it, Ollie, you and I have botched enough times on this podcast, so I kind of feel guilty for bringing that up. But it was, I was thinking, where's Lillian Garcia? She would have made a real botch of it.
The rest of the night would be full of horse jokes on commentary. I tell you what I did really like about this match, though. And that's when it got into overtime. I thought then everyone got into it. I think it went about 4 minutes, maybe.
I reckon it was, according to my calculations, and I've got to say that mathematics was not my strong point, as you know, Ollie, from reading the book. I think it was just under 3 minutes of overtime.
Okay. Oh, I was super into it, though. That's not me thinking it was longer than it was. And that's Sasha Banks' blood, the blood in her mouth, and then it went all over her face. And the referee was starting to pull on his gloves. And I thought, no, please let it just stay on there. And it did make it look, that last submission hold looked even more brutal, just because Sasha Banks had the proverbial crimson mask.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the sudden death, I wasn't sure what they were going to do. I mean, and I thought they explained that well, where they were saying that because this is the end of the line and the last match, I better not use that joke again, I've worn that one out, because this was their last match, there had to be a winner. So I thought that was good as well. I really enjoyed that. So we had the sudden death overtime, so we had to have a winner, and I thought that final period was really well done. And the whole match, the 30 minutes beforehand, set up the overtime perfectly, and the whole way it was done I thought was, the selling and everything, and selling something that we don't see enough of in WWE, especially in a way that is believable. I've got to say, I still found it a little bit difficult to believe that Sasha was really injured. I don't know why. I don't know. I mean, hopefully tonight on Raw she'll come out and she'll be in agony, and that will really be the icing on the cake there, where they'll really sell it. The problem is that in WWE, the selling never seems to. They'll do it for a short time, and then they won't stick with it. They won't persevere. They won't see it through to the end. But in this case, she really saw it through to the end on the sell. She was Banks' nose. She was bleeding, and then Charlotte won with the figure eight. Didn't think she was going to win. I thought they had some really good near falls as well before they got to that point. And those last sort of 3 minutes in the sudden death overtime were very dramatic. It was all very well done. So, I mean, I enjoyed the match. I thought it was a different match. I thought the whole way it was put together was unpredictable. And the whole package in the end worked. I mean, you could say, well, it didn't really do much for Sasha as a babyface, but I'm figuring she's turning heel anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I hope so. Should we move on to the main event?
Yes, let's.
So, I mean, after speaking about Banks and Charlotte and the whole idea of Roadblock end of the line, I kind of think that Banks and Charlotte should have been the main event here.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, maybe they thought, we put them on the main event Hell in a Cell. It's time for Roman Reigns and Kevin Owens to wrap up this show. And especially with what happened at the end, it did sort of make sense.
Yeah.
When we got to the end of the show and we had the post-match beatdown, then it did make sense that this went on last.
So let's try and unpack what's going on here. So, Owens and Roman Reigns had a match. For my money, I thought it was a pretty really solid match. Like it sort of felt like a really solid SmackDown main event from the early noughties. It was like that sort of match. Nothing like crazy good. But then Chris Jericho came out, gave Kevin Owens the code breaker, which means Kevin Owens wins because Roman Reigns is disqualified. Chris Jericho then picks up the title, the Universal title belt, looks like he's going to turn on Kevin Owens, and then passes him the title, the two embrace. Kevin Owens, all the while, looks like he has no idea about this. He looks like he's shocked that Chris Jericho is doing this. And my big issue with this is, why did they have to make it such a secret? Why did Chris Jericho have to be go through such a twisty-turvy way to do it? Because there was never any stakes against him misbehaving. Because we've seen him misbehave when he interfered in the Seth Rollins match wearing the Sin Cara mask, and we were warned of grave consequences from Mick Foley.
And there were none.
But there were none. So then, if there are no consequences there's this big theory that Raw is a heel promotion, like the actual promotion itself is heel. So if people do dastardly things within it, it doesn't have as much of an impact. The opposite to that is SmackDown, which is sort of booked as a face promotion, and when heels do bad things, it feels a lot more impactful. But here, there's no consequences for Jericho's actions, so why would he be so secretive about it? Yeah, I thought this was after what was I enjoyed the match, but the end was absolutely bizarre.
Well, I mean, I predicted this that this would be a ruse and that it would come out that they. I actually felt it would come out that they were working together, and as you say, Owens was not in on it.
Yeah.
But I suppose the whole theory there was, or the whole explanation there was that Jericho was doing this so he could come in there and nail Owens with the code breaker, and then Owens might have a defense in the event that were consequences, which you've just explained there never are. But maybe they're preparing that for tonight on Raw. Maybe Owens can say, listen, I had no idea this was going to happen. I had no idea Chris Jericho was going to do this. How can you penalise me for that? So that would actually be a really nice way of explaining that in advance, if the story writing was that intricate, which it usually isn't. But it might be, as I say, we're recording this before Raw, so we don't know. To me, there was no way Owens was going to be allowed to defeat Roman Reigns. There was just no chance that was going to happen. I mean, I enjoyed the match in the sense that it was well put together. Reigns was booed less than he normally is, which I thought was a really, credit to Kevin Owens. But to me, there was no drama over over the title changing, because we'd said before there was no way Reigns was going to win the title. It wasn't his time to win the title. It didn't feel like it was something that had been built up. It was just something that was just thrown out there. I mean, it struck me on Raw. I think it was on the episode of Raw before Roadblock, where Seth Rollins was doing the Rollins Report. That's right, isn't it? Yeah,
yes.
Rollins Report. And then Kevin Owens came out and actually cut a promo on Rollins, not on Reigns. It's like, hang on a minute, you're supposed to be feuding with Roman Reigns.
Yeah.
There wasn't really a feud between these two. There wasn't, apart from Reigns scoring that win over Owens on Raw to earn the title match, almost nothing was done to build this match up. Again, very much like Jericho versus Rollins, it just seemed like it was, something that they'd booked to give these two guys something to do. And Jericho then comes out and then attacks Owens, so Owens retained the title. But I mean, it had to be some sort of finish like that, because Reigns wasn't going to win, and there's no way that they were going to allow Owens to pin Reigns.
Yeah, so Seth is just in holding till he faces Triple H. Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho are just in holding till they face each other. And Roman's just in holding till he wins the title. It feels like the men's main event picture on Raw is dire. We've been saying it for a few weeks, but I'm really not invested in any of it.
No, I'm absolutely with you. I mean, I suggested on my Facebook page that last night would have been the perfect time to introduce Samoa Joe. He had the cage match with Shinsuke Nakamura on NXT last week. The whole way that ended just felt like Joe's swan song, like his time in NXT was up. Maybe he'll be introduced on Raw tonight. I mean, they need something for that time. They need something new in there. And I think Samoa Joe versus Jericho or Kevin Owens, I think that would be something new. It would be something fresh that we haven't seen in WWE. And presumably there'll be some sort of tag team match tonight with Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns versus Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens. But who really cares? Who really needs to see these guys clash again? It feels like we're in a holding pattern until part-timer season begins. The real stars come back, and the big things start happening in terms of the title picture and the Universal Championship and that part of Raw. I think it'd be great to see Joe appear. Some people have said, they need to hold it off to Raw Rumble, but we've got like Brock Lesnar there and Bill Goldberg there. They're going to be the focus of that match. And there's probably going to be other debuts as well, or returns. So maybe Joe's, if he's introduced at Rumble, it'll kind of get lost because there'll be so many other big things happening. If they were to bring Joe in before then, I think it would make more of an impression. Anyway, getting back to the main event of Roman Reigns, Kevin Owens' main event at Roadblock. After Owens was won by disqualification, so Owens retained, they attacked Reigns. Then Seth Rollins came out, and Jericho and Owens both got smashed through tables. The thing about that was, at that point, people really started booing Reigns more than they had at any point other than when he made his entrance. And at the end there, after they'd smashed Owens through the Raw announcers table up on the stage, and Owens fell off the stage onto the floor, it was quite a hostile reaction to both Rollins and Reigns. So it felt like a bit of a flat finish there.
Yeah, totally. Not a single announcer's table standing at the end.
Yeah.
I think people are so invested in Jericho and Kevin Owens' act. They really feel that friendship there because it's a very endearing thing. And there's nothing endearing about Seth Rollins or Roman Reigns.
No.
They seem like very cynical, conniving people. And so are Jericho and Owens' characters, but at least they've got that redeeming feature of them really, really being genuine friends to each other. Which is definitely what comes across. So, who do you expect they're going to cheer for?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're right, Rollins. I mean, he never really turned babyface. I think he's as a babyface, he's mediocre at best. We've talked enough about Roman Reigns. We don't need to talk about him again. And these two don't really seem to have a whole lot in common. There's not really any warmth between them, and which is bizarre because they were members of the Shield for, what was that? They came in 2012, Survivor Series 2012. Then they split, was it April of 2014? So they were members of the Shield for all that time. Obviously, they were together on NXT before that. So, yeah, they just seem like there's not really any sort of chemistry between them, which doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah. Have you got any more thoughts on I nearly said Fastlane then. I've been doing this all week. I actually had to re-record a news episode because when I got it into the edit, I realised I'd said Fastlane a couple of times instead of Roadblock. But Roadblock, have you got any more Roadblock thoughts?
I don't think so. I think we covered it all. Overall, I enjoyed the show. I would recommend it. Certainly would recommend the opening tag team match and the women's match. And the Neville running. So if you can't be bothered to watch the whole thing, I urge you to at least watch those.
I mean, Stanley Kubrick always used to say about movies is you need 3 really good parts, and then that means you've done a good movie, and that you just listed 3 really good parts then. So that's a tick. Roadblock gets a tick. Nathan Calburn has written in and said, when the inevitable breakup of the New Day happens, how do you think it should be done, and who will be the main breakout star from the group?
I think this could be problematic for all 3. I mean, Kofi Kingston's never going to be a top guy. He's held the Intercontinental title numerous times. Has he held the US title? But he's done that mid-card thing. He's done the tag team thing. I mean, New Day, of course, were the longest reigning tag team champions. So they've gone as far as they can there. It's hard for me to imagine Kofi as a typical heel. I mean, I know New Day were actually heels at one point, weren't they?
Mm.
So, but it's hard for me to really imagine. I mean, they became heels, then of course they turned face. So it's hard for me to see him as a straight up normal heel. So I'm not really sure what he does next. It kind of feels to me like his career has now peaked. I think this has been a really good thing for him because I thought his career had peaked prior to this. I mean, let's face it, when they put the New Day together, and you remember this, Ollie, it was a bit of a disaster, wasn't it? It was supposed to be like a happy, clappy babyface team, like something from the 90s, like, you know, high energy or something like that. I mean, they were like, what's this? It's like something from 25 years ago. And they made it work. So I think it's going to be very hard for Kofi to top this. Big E has done the Power Man routine. He kind of got lost as well. I mean, you know, it was only when they really put him together in this act, and then they made this act work against all the odds, that his career got back on track. He was floundering. So he's done the Power Man thing as both a heel and a babyface. So I'm not really sure where he goes. I mean, Xavier Woods, we talked before about how WWE isn't 100% convinced that he can carry the load in the ring. I mean, he's had some good matches. He's had some good nights and some slightly off nights, I would say. So I'm not sure how he works as a singles player. So, I mean, I would rather that these three stuck together as heels and took that as far as it can go before they split them up and all went their separate ways, because I'm not sure if they're going to... I'm not sure how far they can go individually. And because they've done so well at this, even if what they do next is good, it's going to be seen as a disappointment. What do you think, Ollie?
Yeah, I agree with New Day's direction now. I think they should turn heel and then they go their separate ways. They don't turn on each other per se, but they go their separate ways. Kofi, I've got in my notes here, been there, done that. So, I don't really know what he can do. He's, like you said, he's never going to be a top star. I think there's more value in Big E as being a solid upper mid-card act to run with the United States Championship. But I think the real money here, and it's because he hasn't had that long exposure taint to him, is Xavier Woods. Because I was looking, when Neville showed up on Roadblock, I was like, oh, who else could they bring in? So I looked at all the rosters' weight limits, so that the rosters' weights when they come in. And Xavier Woods is 205 pounds. And Xavier Woods is a pretty decent wrestler. I used to love him as Consequences Creed in TNA. I really liked his act there. And he can talk. And the Cruiserweight division doesn't really have any talkers at the moment. So I think if you put like natural talkers, Jack Gallagher's good, but it seems like he's reading off a script sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think if you put, of course, Austin Aries is fantastic though. If you put Xavier in there though, I think it'd be a great addition, and he could be in the mix, and he could be one of those colourful characters you build around in 205 Live.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I never really saw him as a cruiserweight guy, but that's something he could definitely do. Excellent point, Ollie.
Because he was X Division, wasn't he, in
he
TNA?
Was.
Yeah, so that style translates. And next question, and our last question for the year, wow, is from Jacob Simmons. We answered a question from Jacob in the last podcast, and he was so happy that we did that he sent in an even bigger email saying thank you and how he popped for his own name. So I thought I'd do the second one again because it's Christmas.
Exactly.
So this is Jacob Simmons' question. Since it's nearly Christmas, I think it's appropriate to ask about something many wrestling fans, especially those from Britain, will be putting on their list. A mainstream British wrestling... I went a bit weird there. A mainstream British wrestling promotion. Do you think we will ever return to the days of a weekly wrestling program on mainstream British TV? Or is the best we can hope for another one-off special from World of Sport, like the one we're getting this New Year's Eve?
I mean, I feel like I've been asked this question many times over the last 25 years. I mean, I have been asked this question many times over the last 25 years, and I've asked it many times over the last 25 years. And there is no answer. I mean, during Roadblock, they showed highlights of the press conference where they announced that they were going to crown a UK champion. And Triple H in the voiceover said, "Our intent is to use this tournament as a launching pad for a brand new weekly show produced right here in the UK." Obviously, that's going to be on the WWE network. So that's not on mainstream TV. So it's, what's going to happen there with that talent? Is that talent then going to be allowed to work on other TV shows? I don't think they are. So if a mainstream TV channel over here were to produce a TV show, they're going to need a lot of names. They're going to need, really, if you look at look at the cruiserweight division, what we've been talking about with 205 Live. We've been talking about how that desperately needs some characters, some talkers, and some people to make it work. If you look at that division, it's not really working because it doesn't have the right guys in there to make it work. TJ Perkins, Brian Kendrick, Rich Swann. I mean, Rich Swann is somebody who I think can be part of a vibrant cruiserweight division, but we don't have that yet. I'm sure Neville is going to help. We'll see where we are in like 1 month or 2 months or 3 months' time. But it's all about, if you're going to do a TV show, you've got to have the talent, you've got to have the characters, you've got to have the format, and you've got to have all these things to make it work. Now, is the talent there that's available at the moment in this country? That's one question I would ask, because so many people are working for so many companies and doing so many different things. Like if you look at like Will Ospreay and Marty Scurll, for instance, they've signed with Ring of Honor lately, haven't they? So, you've got to put that team together of people that are going to sign contracts with this proposed mainstream TV producer over here, which will have to be long-term contracts, because if a TV company over here is going to put the money in to do that, they need to know that these characters, these performers that they're invested in are going to stay with them. Now, how many people over here are going to want to sign a long-term contract with, an unknown TV producer? Because that would then prevent them from wrestling for WWE on this proposed WWE Network show, on which the UK Championship is going to be defended, or possibly prevent them from signing developmental deals and going over to Florida. So it's a real tricky one, because we're in this situation right now where we don't really know what's going to happen. Then, of course, we've got World of Sport, which, as you said, they've recorded this one-off special. Where's that going to go? Is that going to become a series? Is that going to be something that they're going to invest in? So right now, I think it's a tough one. If I was involved in a promotion over here that was suddenly going to be on TV and that was suddenly going to invest all this, or had found investment to do all these things, which talent would you sign? Who's available? Who's going to commit long term to this thing that's unproven, when it could potentially prevent them from signing that developmental deal or working for WWE on this WWE Network series? So it's a strange time right now, Ollie. I mean, what do you make of it?
Yeah, it's very confusing, the whole situation. I think there's been a lot of, I spent the entire morning and quite a lot of the Thursday afternoon and evening making my video around the UK Championships announcement, because that is completely entwined in the answer to this question. Because if WWE are expanding over here, then they're not just expanding over here to get their own stuff, they're expanding over here to kill off other wrestling promotions. That's personally what I think, just based on track record. And I think there's been a lot of sort of disinformation put out. William Regal did an interview with WCPW saying that talent will be allowed to work for other promotions. But everything that we've heard going into this, Meltzer has been reporting on these contracts that guys have been getting. It seems like you're either with ITV or WWE. So yeah, it's a very interesting time. it's very exciting in one side of things because, you know, the British wrestling scene, which is so vibrant right now and has been for the last few years, is getting all this exposure and there are so many eyes on it. But at the other time, that's kind of the point where it's make or break, and it could go the next level. Personally, I don't think the next level is with WWE. I think it would be to create a national product, because I have no interest in seeing more WWE. I've got quite enough of that already. Or this could all just completely collapse in on itself and wrestling gets overexposed, or mistakes are made and WWE just obliterate the whole scene over here. So yes, I'm cautious, I'm pessimistically optimistic.
Yeah, it's hard to know how it's all going to play out, and it must be very difficult right now for the talent to decide what to do. What do you do for your career? Do you want to? Are you going to become an enemy of the state if you sign a contract with these people? Is WWE then going to pass on you? I mean, let's face it. Still, in December 2016, the objective of these guys is to get over there, is to go over to the States and work for that company because of the money-making potential. And WWE knows this, of course. On one hand, as you said, it's really good that there's these things happening and people are going to get exposure. But it's very difficult right at this moment in time for us to work out how this is going to play out in the long run. I hope it plays out in the best interests for the talent in British wrestling. That's all I can really say at this time. We're just going to have to wait and see.
Well, what a lovely upbeat note to end it on for the whole year. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yes, Merry Christmas. Thanks very much for listening all year.
Yeah, and if you have, if you don't know what to get someone, or maybe you're going to treat yourself, why don't you head on to Amazon and check out Pro Wrestling Through the Power Slam Years by Finn Martin? Or was it that the interview book, which is called
Power Slam Interviews Volume 1?
Should have been able to take a lucky guess at that title, shouldn't I?
You should have done, yeah.
But yes, that's all we've got time for today. We've gone over yet again. Surprise, surprise. But we will be back in the new year, as will Wrestling Histories. But from me and Finn, thank you very much. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we'll see you soon.